Your test number, test only, 120 number 1, make sure you utilize your Blackboard. You have Mr. Chapman, February, Robert Silva, Mr. Silva, Austin Avenue, Group Exhibit 1, Group Exhibit 2, and Mr. Ferguson. Okay, so speed build first. These are your tests only, and we'll start in the middle for 5 minutes, and it's called Inquiry into a Fire. 5 minutes. Mr. Chapman, would you get a monthly profit and loss statement from your accountant?
Not necessarily a monthly statement.
How often would you get a profit and loss statement?
It varied. There was no specific date.
Would he just do it on your request?
Yes.
Then if you didn't request a profit and loss statement, he didn't make one. Is that correct?
I believe so.
When did he make the last profit and loss statement before the fire?
I believe it was for the fiscal year ending in February of 1988.
All right. From that time on, he did not make a profit and loss statement for you?
I don't believe so.
What was the name of your accountant?
Robert Silva.
How do you spell the last name?
Silva.
Did you have any conversations with Mr. Silva up to the time of the fire about the financial condition of the business?
Oh, I think we just talked about the plans we were making.
Would he tell you what your financial condition was?
I had a pretty good idea what it was.
Did Mr. Silva tell you what it was?
Oh, we would discuss it at lunch.
Did you have any such discussion with him in August of 1988?
I don't recall any in August.
When was the last time you remember having a conversation with Mr. Silva about the financial condition of the company?
I don't recall any particular month. It might have been in June or July when we had lunch together.
Do you recall talking to him over lunch in June or July?
Well, I would think so. We usually had lunch together.
He came out to your office one day a month, is that correct?
That's correct.
Do you remember the last conversation you had with Mr. Silva about the financial condition of the company?
No, I don't.
Do you recall if he told you that the company was making money or losing money?
I don't recall if we ever spoke about making or losing money. We would talk more about what we were doing and what we were going to do.
What do you mean? In the business?
Yes.
Mr. Chapman, what month did you move into the building on Austin Avenue?
I don't recall the exact month.
All right. I am going to show you this 1992 tax return that has been marked Group Exhibit 1. It shows gross sales in 1992 of approximately $335,000 with a net profit of $33,408. Would that have been one of your best years?
I couldn't say without checking the other tax returns.
Okay. I will now show you the 1993 tax return that has been marked Group Exhibit 2. It shows a drop in sales from $335,000 to $306,000. Was there any reason you can think of now why the sales dropped off from 1992 to 1993?
Because the salesmen were not working.
How many salesmen did you have in your employ at that time?
I believe we had 4. Mr. Ferguson was a full-time salesman. Then we also had 3 stockholders who were brokers.
Also, the cost of goods sold went from $132,000 to $214,000. Do you know why the cost of goods rose so much, whereas the sales dropped?
I don't know. Perhaps we had a bigger inventory.
Okay. And then we'll do your second 120 test. Proper names. You have Group Exhibit 3, Group Exhibit 5, Mr. Ferguson, Mr. Chapman. You have Group Exhibit 6, and Group Exhibit 7. This will be your 120 Q&A number 2. Continues from the last one, starts in the middle for 5 minutes. Well, the inventory at the beginning of the year was $81,000. It was $55,000 at the end of the year. So your inventory was actually smaller.
Then they probably had a lot of waste.
Are you saying they did have a lot of waste, or don't you know?
I don't know.
You don't know.
No.
Now, the 1993 tax return shows a net loss for the year of $99,800. Is that correct?
That's what it shows here.
All right. I will show you the 1994 tax return that has been marked Group Exhibit 3. It shows that the sales increased to $532,000. Do you know the reason for the increase in sales in 1994 over 1993?
The salesman probably went out and started to work again.
I now show you the 1995 tax return marked as Group Exhibit 5. In that year, the sales dropped from $532,000 to $460,000. Would that have been because the men were not out selling?
It's hard to say. Maybe the accounts were changing their lines. This sometimes happens.
All right. Were your only salesmen some of the stockholders?
Yes, except for Mr. Ferguson.
Were they on salary or did they work on commission?
At the beginning, Mr. Ferguson was on salary. Then he went on commission. The other men were on commission.
At the time of the fire, how many salesmen did you have?
We had our house accounts and 2 brokers.
Was Mr. Ferguson and the other stockholders working for you at the time of the fire?
Mr. Ferguson was not a stockholder. He sold for us for a year. Then we lost him for a year and a half. Then he came back again. He was selling for us at the time of the fire.
Was he working on a salary or on commission?
He was on commission.
How long had he been working for you as a salesman at the time of the fire?
I would say about 2 years.
Mr. Chapman, the 1995 tax return shows a net loss of $41,000. Do you recall any conversation with the stockholders about the net loss for that year?
No.
I now show you what has been marked as Group Exhibit 6. This is the 1996 tax return. It shows that sales went up from $460,000 to $543,000. Can you think of any reason for this increase in sales?
No, I can't.
The return also shows a net loss for that year of $15,889. Do you recall any conversations with the stockholders about the net loss for that year?
There might have been a meeting of stockholders in 1996.
Were there any meetings after that in which the financial condition of the company was discussed?
I don't recall.
I show you now what has been marked as Group Exhibit 7. This is the 1979 tax return. It shows that sales went down from $543,000 to $435,000. Do you recall the reason for this decrease in sales?
No, I don't.
The tax return also shows a net loss for that year of $53,320. Do you recall any discussion with the stockholders or the directors with regard to that? Okay, and we'll get ready for your 100s. So on your 100, number 1, you have Becker and Mrs. Sullivan's, apostrophe S, okay? This is going to be 100 Q&A number 1 for 5 minutes, and it starts in the middle. How far were you from the intersection at the time you first saw the other car start to turn left?
I would say I was approximately 3 car lengths from her car when I realized that she was turning directly in front of me.
About 3 car lengths?
Right.
And you were then in which lane? Left or right lane?
Right lane.
How fast was she traveling?
10 miles an hour.
How long had you been traveling 10 miles an hour?
I hadn't traveled over 10 miles an hour since I left the office.
You had come that far at 10 miles an hour?
10 miles or less.
Were there any other cars behind you?
Yes.
Were there any other cars in front of you?
Yes.
Immediately before the impact, was there a car in front of you?
No, because I had stopped for the light.
Were there any cars behind you?
Yes.
Did they stop after the impact?
No.
Do you know who they were?
No.
Were there any cars coming from the other direction that you know of at the time the accident happened, going the other way?
You mean going up Becker?
Yes.
Yes. There were cars behind me.
Was there any car in the left lane beside you when the accident happened?
I wasn't in the left lane.
I didn't say you were. I said, was there any car in the left lane?
I don't know.
You were in the right lane, you say?
Yes.
Was there any car in the left lane?
This I don't know.
You don't have any memory about that?
I was watching what was taking place with me and her.
Now, at the time of the accident, you say this was a 4-lane road and you were in the left lane. Is that right? As you came down the hill?
No.
You were in the right lane?
On my right.
On your right. In other words, the one nearest the curb.
Right.
Now, we are clear about that. There isn't any question about what we are talking about. There are 2 lanes for traffic going in your direction, and you say you were in your right lane, not the left lane.
That is correct.
And if the police officer shows you to have been in the left lane, would he be wrong?
Yes.
Do you know whether his report shows you to be in the left lane or not?
I do not.
And actually the other car was in the right lane at the time the impact occurred and almost out of the intersection.
Mrs. Sullivan's car. She couldn't have been out of the intersection.
Do you say she was in the left lane when you struck her?
No, she was in the right lane in front of me.
And you had been driving in the left lane?
No, the right lane.
You were driving in the right lane?
Correct.
And had been for how far?
The past 3 blocks.
You?
I'm like, oh, highlight.
Okay, you all. And so we have your next test. Number 2100 Northeast, Becker, Federal, and Mrs. Sullivan. And it continues, okay? This will be your next test at 100 words a minute for 5 minutes, you all. Starts in the middle. For the past 3 blocks,
No.
where were you going at the time of the accident?
Home.
And where is your home in relation to this intersection, north or south?
Northeast.
And what route did you plan to take?
Straight out Becker.
Okay. And then to what street?
Federal.
And then turn in what direction?
Then turn left at Federal.
You have told me that you still suffer from what you describe as pain in your arm, pain in your back and neck. Does that completely describe everything you claim you still suffer from?
It is not just pain. It is intensive pain.
Do you have anything else that you claim came from this accident?
Arms, shoulders, the back, the neck, and the left side of the face.
Tell me about the left side of the face. What is that?
There are times when it is numb.
Now, have we covered all the injuries that you claim you still have?
No.
There is something else?
Yes. I have severe headaches about 5 days a week, nearly every day during the week, 5 times a week.
Did you get out of your car?
No, I waited for the police.
Who called the police?
She did.
When we are talking about she, we are talking about Mrs. Sullivan.
Yes.
She was the only one in the other car.
No.
Who else was in the car?
There was a child in the car with her.
How old was the child?
I have no idea.
Well, can you guess?
Just a toddler.
Was there anyone in your car with you?
No.
Do you know of anyone who claimed to have seen this accident
2 people approached the car.
and talked to you?
Right.
Did they tell you who they were?
No.
Did you talk to them?
They just asked if they could be of any help, and I told them the police had been called.
Did they identify themselves at that time?
No.
If this case were to go to trial, would you be able to tell your attorney enough about them so that he could locate them?
This is a possibility.
How are you going to do that?
I don't know.
Do you know who they are at all?
No.
Do you know where they live?
No.
How would you go about locating them?
Perhaps I would meet them on the street, and I believe I could recognize them.
Did they tell you what their occupation was?
No.
Did they drive up to the scene or did they walk?
They walked.
Were they walking on the sidewalk when the accident happened? Do you know?
This I do not know.
They have no idea other than what you have told me now about who these people are.
Right.
And you don't think you could find them either. Is that right?
Maybe I could and maybe I couldn't. I don't know, sir.
What do you mean?
I mean that I don't know. I can't tell you.
Okay, and so that concludes your test, you all. Very good test. Hopefully you got one, okay? Have a great day. See you tomorrow.
To find